Ukrainian troops keep advancing in Kursk Oblast. They take additional territory inside of Russia, while rumors about a second Ukrainian offensive heated up yesterday evening. There were even claims that it already started. We'll talk about this as well as about the developments along other parts of the front line of the war in Ukraine and in Russia. And we'll talk about political changes, international aid, and things like that. Everything that's connected in this situation report about the war in Ukraine. There has been a drone attack into Moscow itself. The mayor said that at least 10 drones flew into Moscow and were shot down here. We have the total number of the Russians, you see here, explosions in the sky. The total number that were supposedly shot down is claimed by Riba, the pro-Russian mill bloggers, as 45 and 5 missiles intercepted. Now, this is what they claim. That doesn't mean that it wasn't more that came through. That also doesn't mean that they actually shot down 45. I take this source simply to illustrate the size of the attack, because it's unlikely they claim they shot down 45 when it was in total only 5 drones. Then the oil depot that is on fire in Proletarsk in Krasnodar is still burning. It should be the 5th day in a row now. Several other tanks have now caught fire as well. And according to the reports, the Russian fire brigades have simply given up and accepted to let it burn down. Then we have a video of an attack into Murmansk. Now, this is what looks like a small plane, is a drone. So it's a plane modified to fly without crew. And this was filmed in Murmansk. So in the furthest northern region along the NATO bordering Finland. And here you can see that this is just a bird. And in a moment, it's going to get hit and be taken down. Yeah. There it exploded. It was clearly meant to aim at an airfield there that was in the close proximity where Russian strategic bombers are stationed. In this regard, the attack failed, obviously. Then we have a claim by the Ukrainians that I cannot confirm, that on their attack on the Savasleika, something like this, airfield, 3 planes were destroyed. 1 MiG-31, that's the plane that's being used to launch Kinzhal missiles, as well as 2 Ilyushin 76 transport planes. They claim 5 more were damaged. I have yet to see any proof of this, so it might be true, it might not be true. The Russians, on the other hand, have redeployed their Karankurt corvettes into the Caspian Sea. This still allows them to launch their Caliber cruise missiles from those ships. We haven't even heard about Caliber attacks in quite a while anymore, and it shows the effect the Ukrainians are achieving with their strikes on the Russian harbors in the Black Sea, both with naval drones as well as with planes. So they are being withdrawn to reduce the danger on these ships after the Russian Black Sea fleet having suffered serious losses. At the same time, the Ukrainian source is claiming, but the capabilities of these missiles today no longer pose such a threat as at the beginning of the large scale invasion, he said, meaning that apparently the Ukrainians found a way to be more successful in intercepting them either with electronic warfare, or that their air defense has become proficient enough to allow them to take it down in bigger numbers. That's at least the claim I would read out of this here. Then Then we have daily reports at the same time that the Russians are attacking Ukraine with ballistic missiles, but barely ever is one being shot down. This shows that the Ukrainian conventional air defense at lower flight levels must have gotten big enough to defend against a lot of those attacks, but the number of systems that can reliably shoot down ballistic missiles is still very negligible, and thus we see a daily or almost daily use by the Russians in this regard. We have the World Health Organization also saying that by now they have recorded 1,940 attacks on healthcare installations inside of Ukraine, and they say since December 2023 it has intensified now on a near daily basis. It's hard to interpret it in any other way than intention, especially if the World Health Organization is recording a spike upwards. You will always have some damage to healthcare installations in a military campaign, but if it suddenly ticks up, it's at least an indication that the Russians are more seriously now targeting healthcare installations inside of Ukraine, which would obviously be a war crime. So let's switch to the Kursk region. We take Petrenko's map first. Here he shows a small gain in the east, and we have Riba's map here. Also, one is pro-Ukrainian, that's Petrenko. This here is pro-Russian. This shows the current situation according to the perspective of each of them. We still see a lot of Ukrainian advances here, and in fact, they do still advance. We have a geolocation here in the region of Ruskoye Perechnoye, and this is in the north here. I'll quickly probably have to look for it. No, it's here. So here in the northern region, the Ukrainians have reached up to this point here. They also keep striking the pontoon bridges. We see a lot of fires here. That's where the pontoon bridges are being built by the Russians. And we also have a video of further attacks, quite impressive ones. You see that's a pontoon bridge driving here. Now this here on the back can be opened and then put into the water. I think it unfolds automatically. It's basically dumped in and then it unfolds to be used in as a pontoon bridge. And the impressive video shows that it's closing in, and the guy in the cabin has actually realized a drone is closing in on them, and there it hit. This is a video I showed you yesterday already. This is a strike here, and here we see missile attacks, whether it's HIMARS or something else, I cannot really say, but we see they are in the process of building it while being shelled with cluster munition here. Probably HIMARS in this regard, could be ATACMS too, especially regarding the size of the strike of the cluster munition, but that's not 100% my expertise, so I leave this to others. But as said, with HIMARS we usually see a significantly smaller range, probably more like this here. This looks to me like ATACMS, but we'll have to see in the future. Those are the attacks that are continuing on the pontoon bridges because the Ukrainians want to take them out. Here is a position where on satellite pictures one was seen, and here was the one that was in construction next to the river. It's right between Glushkovo and Svanoe, or yeah, more or less in between. And the second one is right east of Glushkove. Here again, that's where we initially saw one on satellite pictures. I have yet to see whether it was successfully attacked and destroyed over the past few days. According to, we now have satellite pictures for the attack on the bridge in Karish. This is the third bridge, the closest one to the Ukrainian border, this here. Now, we have seen that this bridge was completely destroyed. This was very heavily damaged here. And this one is the one I just showed you. Here, by the way, are the positions for the pontoon bridges. And the one we see here shows us that it's hit, but it's still standing. Whether it is capable of taking trucks, tanks or something is a different story, and one I cannot reliably answer simply from looking at pictures. But we see that the bridge has taken damage. We had, I think it was Romanov again, who claimed that it was destroyed. As of now, apparently it was at most damaged, but it might be, the information about this might have already changed. It might already be destroyed by now. In total, the number of troops in this area, in this pocket, are now being, with more and more sources, it's being claimed that there are about 3,000 Russian soldiers here. I talked about it in the past. This whole area here is still defended by the Russians. There must be a serious number of soldiers in it with more than 50 kilometers of front line. It clearly indicates that the Russians will have a significant number in there. The number itself is out of my capability to actually judge. So we'll probably work with the 3,000 as of now. It doesn't mean they will be cut off, that they will have to capitulate, that they will be destroyed in there. The river is small enough for every decent swimmer to cross it. They have small boats that they can cross, but they will have to make a choice rather soon if the Ukrainians keep pounding their pontoon bridges. They will have to make a choice whether they want to lose pontoon bridges daily to get in some supplies in between, or whether they want to withdraw at some point. This is going to be a serious problem, as they are cut off from every solid way north, from every line of communication towards the north. The front line is still moving, though, in other directions, and this is one of the most impressive one. We have north of Olgovka, here Alexandrovka. This is 6 kilometers before further north than what we've seen so far. Now, Alexandrovka is here. So we have the Ukrainians, just to zoom out, to give a little perspective, we have the Ukrainians roughly here at this point. So they have marched north here. We have a geolocation of a shelling of their positions here. Here Alexandrovka, here they have been seen. Here is Olgovka, and here is Korenevo. So they are advancing towards the north in this region while being attacked, but they are still advancing further north. But that's not the only thing. We have them now in Malaya Lochnia. Now, in last situation report, I think it was the last situational picture, I told you that according to the Russians, they have been bypassed in this position here. But as of now, it's unclear to which degree the town itself has been taken by now. So this is here in this town, just to zoom out. In this town, the Ukrainians have now entered the southern part. And the Russians were saying yesterday that they have been bypassed here by the Ukrainians, who cut the lines in the north, and they have crossed up here. So they have cut off our troops. Russian sources were saying they have cut them up and off and put them in encirclement in this area. We now see that the Ukrainians are advancing from the south into Lochina, I think is the name. We see them advancing here. They keep advancing and they keep up the pressure. What happened to that pocket, I cannot say. It's either still in existence, or the Russians managed to open up the lines of communication, or they have withdrawn. We'll have to see over the next few days. The Ukrainians are advancing in other directions as well. We have them here east of Martinovka. Now, this is not a massive advance. We had them take Martinovka here. This is to the northeast of Sucha, and now they are being spotted here. So not a massive advance, but we see that they keep pushing to the east after taking the town here as well. Then they are also being reported. And then we also have signs how they change the situation here. This is a sign mentioning the town of Sverdlovko, I think. This here, and it actually says that it's under the control. It's being administered by the oblast of Sumy. So they are, according to those pictures, if that's not a fake, they're adding signs basically acting like the towns north of the border are part of their own territory, at least in this regard. Obviously, it should be meant as some kind of provocation as well, but we'll have to see how this continues here. This was it from the Kursk region. So the Ukrainians are still advancing here. They're keeping up the pressure in the west, in their pocket here, but so far they don't show additional attempts to push into it. They've cut off, very likely completely, the lines of communications towards the north here on land. So the Russians have to cross the river now for any communication, and it seems like the Ukrainians simply want to starve them out, put the pressure on them to force them to withdraw or accept a reduced combat capability. We'll have to see over the next time. So far, at least, I cannot see additional advances towards the west or from the southwest into that area. We'll switch over to the other parts of the front line. northern front, I have nothing. There are Russian claims that they managed to advance here at Liboke. Where exactly, no idea, and I don't have visual proof, and I don't have admission of defeat by the Ukrainians, so that's unconfirmed as of now. We switch over eastern front, nothing to report north of the Seversky Donetsk. South of the Seversky Donetsk, we have some more information about Ivano-Darivka, and here we have the Ukrainians losing a position right to the south of it. The video itself shows Russians taking a position. They actually blow up the Ukrainian strongpoint there, take it. So we see the Russians are now down here, which makes it likely that the front line is right now like this, which explains why Ivano-Darivka is definitely back in Ukrainian hands as of now. Further south, or further to the west, actually, the Russian Ministry of Defense is claiming that they took the Vimka railway station, which should be right here. And this is not unimportant, as we can see. It would be roughly 2.5 kilometers away from where they have been previously. We have the claim here that they liberated the Vemka railway station, but there's no visual evidence of this. So it might be true that we simply do not have proof of it. We do not have the Ukrainians admitting to it, or it could be one more claim that the Russians claimed they captured something, which they hadn't. This wouldn't be the first time that this happened. Then we continue further to the west, and here we have no additional changes that I can record along the whole map here. Then we go down in the area of Toretsk, and here the Russians have taken a significant territory towards both Pivnichne and Drushpa. Roughly this here has now fallen into full Russian control here. The Russians also managed to advance a little bit down here. Now we had the confirmation that they were here. Now they have crossed a little bit to the south. Not really major news here, but it shows us that the movement is still happening. We can see it here that the Russians are now south of the road in those buildings are confirmed in here as well. In Salisne, they also had additional success. Now they have been here on the waste heap. I showed you the geolocation in the last situation report, and now we have them north of it. So they have been on here, and this is on the map here. So the Russians have now advanced probably in this direction. This should be Russian control as of now, or at the very least the gray zone has been extended to the north. I cannot say in this regard that they have full control, but it should be, from the geolocations we have, this should no longer be under Ukrainian control as of now. Further south, we have an unclear situation in New York. In the last situation report, I said that I have the rumors that in this area, Ukrainians might have been cut off. Now we look at the pro-Ukrainian. This is a pro-Ukrainian map. We look at the pro-Ukrainian deep state map, and it shows us that supposedly there's a pocket here in New York between Nelipivka and New York itself. Whether that's true or not is unclear. Others claim that this is far from the truth and this is hearsay or anything like this. This could be coping to make a bad situation less bad by simply claiming it doesn't exist, but I cannot say. It might be the truth that some Ukrainians are cut off here. It might not be the truth. We'll have to wait over the next few days until I have more proof of the actual situation there. Further west, the Russians keep advancing in the Pokrovsk area, and they keep advancing with a solid pace, we have to say. They have taken Shuravka and are on the this is here. This is now fully under their control, and they have entered Krasny Yar. How far they have managed to solidify their hold, I cannot say, but they are definitely in Krasny Yar, or they were to a certain degree. They have reached the outskirts of, or the outermost houses of Novohodrivka. Here as well, they keep advancing towards Pokrovsk over the last few days. They also took the area between Komishivka and Yasnobrodivka. This much I predicted in the last situation report, as we had the claims that the Russians had, I think, taken this here, and this was still gray zone. It was obvious that the Ukrainians will not try to hold out while the Russians, while they have a water to their back, and in the south, the Russians pressuring from the east. And and in the north the Russians pushing downwards here in these directions. All of this could have ended very badly, so it was obvious that they would withdraw, and this has now happened. So this whole area here is now being confirmed to be in Russian hands. This includes two towns, Mishove and Skuchne. Those two towns are now also under Russian control. That's everything from this region here until we go down to Krasnohorivka. Here we have the Russians advancing towards the west of the town itself. This is a geolocation of it. We see they have now crossed into the houses of the outskirts itself. The main area of Krasnohorivka is under Russian control for a couple of weeks already, but they have started to advance towards the west as well in this direction. Further south, we have the Russians advancing close to Konstantinivka, and they actually advanced through Paraskovivka until this position here. We have a geolocation of this, and while I cannot be 100% certain that they have managed to cross through here, and it was actually here, so a little less bad, while I cannot confirm that they have not crossed through here, it seems extremely unlikely because we have not seen them yet at the river here. So this would mean that the most likely advance has been through Paraskovivka, which would then mean that all of this here should probably be by now under Russian control as well. This is an advance of over 1 kilometer that the Russians managed to achieve. They also managed to advance here south, east of Vodiane. We have a geolocation of this as well, where they have simply advanced somewhat closer to the 00532. This is the road between Konstantinivka and Vuleda. By now, it's probably no longer the most important thing. They have reached, I think, until here. With the road fully cut in the south, having, of course, losing territory is never good, but this won't change the overall situation anymore if they manage to advance a few hundred meters along that road. That road is now cut. There is no sugarcoating this anymore. The road here is cut, but there they have advanced. This was it with geolocations there where we have a change in territory. I have something from the Crimean bridge here. This shows that the Russians keep fortifying the area to make it harder to strike. You see that they construct something next to the road, and we see here that apparently they start building a barrier, or that's even a second bridge. I'm not 100% sure. It almost looks like they built a second bridge right next to it. So we'll have to keep an eye on this, especially looking at this here. Actually looks like they are using they are in a construction site here. I'm not 100% sure if this is supposed to be a barrier to protect the bridge or if this is supposed to be an auxiliary bridge. Both is possible as of now, even though I have to say this picture here this here is clearly barriers, but this almost looks like it's supposed to be an auxiliary bridge in this region. Overall, to the overall situation, we have the rumors from the south that I mentioned initially. We have Romanov saying, having waited for the transfer of our forces to the Kursk direction, the Ukrainian armed forces began an offensive in the area in Zaporizhzhia. This is from yesterday. So the second offensive that I said I think is not unlikely. I said maybe 60%, so possible but far from certain, has started. We have another Russian mill blogger. The enemy has become active. It's conducting reconnaissance in force, so no talk of offensive yet. As of now, I do not see additional claims that the offensive is going in full blow, and Romanov is not one of the most reliable Russian mill bloggers, so he was apparently hysterical. It shows us that there is activity, and reconnaissance in force, if it's true, is more activity by the Ukrainians than we had in a long time, especially if it includes vehicles, armored fighting vehicles. I will link you the video why I think there might be a second offensive in case you haven't missed it, but let's talk about the southern region here. Now you can see the concentration of Russian forces here, but signs are one thing. We had in the last situation report, I mentioned the spokesperson for the Tavarisk region, which is responsible for this for the Ukrainians, and they were saying the Russians have 75 to 90,000 men there. That's just one number, but the more important thing was they say that they only withdrew 1,000 to 2,000 men from this whole front for Kursk. So the weakening of the Russians has been maybe 5% here. That's not that they have been weakened to a degree that the Ukrainians will suddenly be able to march just through. Then the Surovikin line is still in existence. The minefields, as far as the Ukrainians hadn't managed to clear them here while advancing towards the south, they are still here. We have not heard about any removal of the mines, and it's unlikely that it happened. So that the Ukrainians would suddenly be able to crush through to pierce through the Russian lines here feels unlikely. If this is supposed to be in this region, it feels unlikely. Crossing the river here is another huge challenge. The river, while the reservoir on the map here is no longer in existence, the river is still several hundred meters wide, and in the 2 years time in between, there wasn't enough time for big vegetation to pop up. So they are basically having no cover whatsoever except some contours on the bottom of the previous reservoir. They would be an open field for kilometers, then having to cross a body of water, then being out in the open again. So while it's surely too much to say this is impossible for the Ukrainians to cross over the Dnipro in the old reservoir, it's not the most likeliest thing either. So while an offensive in the south is a serious possibility, I am still somewhat doubtful about where it's going to happen, if it's going to happen, where it's going to happen, and how successful it even can be with the context that we have, that the fortifications here managed to stop Ukrainians that should have been stronger than they are right now, and with a reservoir that might no longer be the same obstacle that it has been, but hasn't gotten significantly better. I mean, the body of water is in the south as well, and we've seen how difficult it is for either side to cross it here. So we'll have to keep an eye on it, and if you don't want to miss it, I would like to invite you at this point to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss updates in case something happens. I have more though. This is the order of battle that has been tracked according to reports, open sources, etc. of the Russians in this region, and this should not be misunderstood. Now we can see motorized rifle regiment, wow, a whole regiment, several battalions, a whole regiments again, several brigades. Even the Russians must have sent so much, but the reality is, from all the reports we have, it's fragments of those units. So it's when they had a free company, a free battalion, they would send it. If it wasn't in the front line, they didn't take out complete units. So even if we read it's the 200th Motorized Rifle Brigade, this is not going to be high. It's extremely likely that this is not going to be the full brigade. The actual Russian strength there is significantly lower. They only sent the units that have been sent there in from other parts that were available at other parts of the front line. In the Ukrainian General Staff also mentioned the artillery fire that has been the number of shells that have been fired by both sides, and we see here that the Russians were shooting in the time between the 6th and the 14th of August. In the past few days, they shot 44,000 shells, whereas the Ukrainians have shot 14,000. So 1 to 3 in amount of fire volume by either side. Still, the Russians have significant artillery superiority. In troop generations, we have news from Ukraine. Ukrainians are now in the process of legalizing, giving the full legal backing, laws, etc. for volunteers to give them residency and the right to attain citizenship if they fought for Ukraine. That includes their family as well. So Ukraine wants to reward the foreigners that have decided to fight for its cause. On the Russian side, good news for all those who like Russia and complain about the West and its bad things. The Putin has signed a decree basically saying if you share traditional Russian spiritual and moral values and you think that I think it's somewhere here, that the decadent West and the neoliberalism, if it hurts you so much, if it's attacking you, then you can ask for a residency in Russia at every embassy. You do not even need to fulfill language requirements. You do not need to fulfill cultural knowledge requirements. If you feel like you feel Russian, but you don't speak Russian and you think the West is treating you badly, you can now apply for citizenship, even though I would probably not recommend signing something in Cyrillic and in Russian, because otherwise you might find yourself on the front lines in a uniform. You wouldn't be the first one to do so. But everyone who thinks Russia is significantly better for these persons is now good news. They can now go to Russia and ask for residency. Then we have one final video. I had it in the last situation report. I'm not sure in the last situational picture. I'm not sure how well it was displayed here because at least in German, I left the audio on, and so thus my explanation was completely inaudible. So I'll rather do it again. Here we have the Ukrainians using 40mm multiple launch rocket systems in Kursk, as you can see. And the interesting part here is they are being used from regular pickup trucks. So while the volume of fire is surely lower than from whatever a BM 21 from a Grad system, at the same time it should be much easier to obtain, as they can basically use off-the-shelf pickup trucks, and we see them here in use for an area effect artillery in Russia. And in international support, we have Sweden now having approved the transfer of Panzerbandwagen to Ukraine. This is more or less, it could probably be compared with an M113 when it comes to size, to capabilities, but it has a 20mm autocannon on top, so it has a non-insignificant firepower. Even though there are some issues, it's an old air-to-air weapon, so it's old cannons that they took from planes and somehow modified to put in IFVs, in their APCs here, but it still gives them significantly more firepower than the usual M113. In total, the number is 300, and all of them are going to be given to Ukraine with all spare parts, with everything that is available, but they have been 50 years old, and then they were decommissioned for 10 years, so how long it will take to hand them over to Russia in working order will obviously be a question that I cannot answer. Still though, good news, they will definitely be better than some unarmored pickup or something like this that we've seen in the past Ukraine operate with. But that was it from me for now. If you like this situation report, please give it a thumbs up. It really helps with the algorithm. If you're new here, I would like to invite you to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon and help me reach the 100,000. I'm actually no longer that far away from it. And leave a comment what do you think about the current situation and the current developments. This channel is only possible because of the support of viewers like you. If you like to support the channel, you can do so by the means in the description. But that's it from me for now. Thank you for watching, and I'll be back.